In the stillness of the night, the soft illumination of the living room enveloped the space in a delicate golden hue, mirroring the complexities of Claire Donovan's existence. She lingered on the tattered sofa, solitude enveloping her as a half-empty glass of red wine cradled in her hand. The relentless ticking of the wall clock resonated through the silence, magnifying the profound emptiness that enveloped the house. A fierce wind howled outside, sending shivers through the trees and rattling the windows with its relentless force. Yet Claire remained oblivious. Her gaze was fixed on the luminous display of Richard's phone, the very device she had discovered on his desk only moments before. The screen glowed with a text message that etched itself into her memory. "Did you find yourself thinking of me this evening, Richard?" A name hung in the air, elusive and haunting. Sophia. Claire felt a constriction in her heart. She perused the message repeatedly, her mind racing for any alternative explanation, yet each avenue she explored only brought her back to the same heart-wrenching reality. Her throat tightened, and her hands quivered as she delved deeper into the exchange. Images, commitments, and even arrangements for a journey she had never known of. Everything lay bare before her, revealing a truth she could no longer ignore. The creaking of the front door pulled her sharply into the moment. Claire glanced up, taken aback as Evan entered the room. His coat draped casually over one shoulder, his youthful visage aglow in the gentle light, yet a weariness lingered in his expression. He remained silent, his gaze fixed on his mother, conveying a silent question. "What troubles you, Mom?" Claire quickly placed the phone on the table, attempting to mask her unease. "Evan, you're home late," she remarked, her voice gravelly, as if she had just forced down a heavy stone lodged in her throat. "I went for a walk," Evan replied, as he set his bag down. Yet, his eyes remained fixed on her countenance, where the anguish was more apparent than she understood. "Are you all right? Has something occurred?" Claire wished to convey that all was well. She yearned to smile, to dispel the weight that now lingered in the air between them. Yet she found herself unable to do so. The images from the phone etched themselves into her memory, their jagged contours stabbing at her heart. "I'm fine," she lied, yet her tear-filled eyes revealed the truth behind her facade. Evan approached, settling himself onto the sofa next to her. "You are not fine. Share with me, Mother. Kindly." Claire shook her head, lifting a hand as if to halt him. Yet the worry reflected in his eyes diminished her determination. For a brief instant, she felt the urge to unleash her pent-up emotions, to cry out that she could no longer endure Richard's treachery, that she had sacrificed her whole existence for a man who had ceased to love her. Yet, rather than uttering a word, she remained still, her silence punctuated by the steady stream of tears cascading down her cheeks. Evan remained silent. He extended his hand, resting it softly upon hers. A modest act, yet it bore an abundance of solace. His gaze held a softness, yet beneath it simmered an unspoken depth, a truth neither of them was willing to confront. At first, Claire remained oblivious, yet within that fleeting touch, a seed of something perilous had taken root. Claire remained still on the sofa, her fingers clutching the empty wine glass, as though it were her sole anchor to the world around her. Richard's phone rested quietly on the table, but the messages reverberated in her thoughts, each word slicing through her like a sharp blade. She sensed an inability to draw in air, her chest tightened by the stifling burden of treachery. How had it arrived at this point? How could the man she once held in such high regard, the one who filled her heart with the promise of everlasting love, transform into a figure so unfamiliar, so remote, so harsh. Her gaze wandered, almost without intention, to the corner of the room, where a sizable, dust-laden canvas stood propped against the wall. It was a canvas she had begun years prior, yet it remained incomplete. Claire straightened, her tear-filled eyes captivated by it as if it contained the essence of another existence, a period when her world was alive with vibrancy, rich in color and brimming with hope. In those days, Claire was a youthful figure, her eyes sparkling with enthusiasm and her heart overflowing with aspirations. Art transcended mere passion for her. It was her dialect, her means of engaging with the universe. During those years, each stroke of her brush seemed to breathe life into a fragment of her soul, transforming every painting into a dream made real. Her professors at art school frequently lauded her creations, deeming them extraordinary, and Claire had come to believe she was destined to create, to embrace a life filled with freedom and limitless imagination. It was then that she encountered Richard, a youthful entrepreneur whose confident smile and eyes brimmed with ambition. He embodied the perfect partner she believed she required. Steady, strong, a figure capable of offering her protection and unconditional love. As Richard knelt with a glimmer of hope in his eyes, Claire's answer came without a moment's pause. She was convinced that his love would ignite the fire that would drive her art, lifting her to new heights. Those early years with him unfolded like a vivid masterpiece, alive with color and emotion. He cherished her, always proclaiming his admiration for her talent and encouraging her to pursue her aspirations. On tranquil evenings, he would observe her as she painted, savoring his wine and proclaiming, "Claire, the world will surely marvel at your talent." Yet, life was not a canvas that Claire could manipulate at will. With the arrival of Evan, a transformation unfolded in every aspect of life. As Richard immersed himself deeper into his work, the once frequent words of encouragement began to dwindle, becoming scarce and infrequent. Claire channeled her every ounce of energy into nurturing Evan, persuading herself that she was fulfilling her obligation, that this was her role as a mother. Her brushes and canvases lay hidden, accompanied by the dreams she had cherished with such devotion. Claire endeavored to keep regret at bay. Her love for Evan surpassed all else in existence. He was her beacon, her sole comfort amid those exhausting days. Her young son, with his wide, innocent eyes, would frequently sit beside her as she painted, captivated by the process. "Draw me, Mom," Evan would plead, and Claire would oblige, immortalizing his cherubic face on the canvas. She held tightly to those ephemeral instances, those delicate pieces of her fervor, yet in the end, even those canvases remained incomplete. Her union with Richard evolved in ways she had never envisioned. He transformed into a mere specter, perpetually missing, and even in moments of physical presence, it felt as if he existed in a realm beyond reach. Claire frequently pondered whether she had erred, questioning if her total devotion to her family was a misstep, or if perhaps she had merely misjudged the one she had entrusted her faith to. The answers perpetually danced just out of reach, while the sadness remained, an unwavering presence by her side. In the present moment, Claire's gaze lingered on the dust-laden painting in the corner, as though it held within its frame all her silent suffering and unrealized aspirations. Her tears flowed freely, a torrent of emotion that could not be contained. She remained unaware of Evan's arrival until his voice shattered the stillness of the room. "Mother, are you well?" he inquired, his expression marked by worry as he approached. Claire turned to gaze at him, her son who had transcended boyhood to become a man, his visage still holding echoes of the child she once sketched. His eyes, reminiscent of her own, mirrored not only concern but also a reflection of herself, embodying all she had been and all she had yearned for. Claire paused, her silence stretching into the air. She was unable to. The burden of time, of decisions made, of aspirations left behind and the wounds of treachery weighed heavily upon her. Evan moved nearer, his essence anchoring her, his concern cutting through the fog of her mind. In his gaze, she perceived an emotion that transcended mere concern, an elusive feeling that stirred her heart and left her breathless. Evan sat opposite Claire at the kitchen table, the chandelier's light creating gentle shadows that danced across her anxious features. The dinner plate remained untouched, the food having long succumbed to the chill of neglect. Since reading those messages, Claire found herself unable to swallow even a morsel. No matter how diligently she attempted to conceal her feelings, Evan's gaze appeared to penetrate her defenses, as if he were privy to every unspoken thought dancing in her mind, despite her silence. "What troubles you, mother?" Evan inquired, his tone unwavering yet soft, imbued with a subtle insistence. "I sense that you're concealing something beneath the surface. Do not attempt to convince me that it holds no significance. Your eyes reveal it all." Claire lifted her gaze, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears. She hesitated to voice it, reluctant for Evan to witness her vulnerability, yet deep down, she understood that she couldn't conceal it from him indefinitely. "It's nothing, sweetheart," she repeated, yet her trembling voice revealed the truth beneath her words. Evan set his hands firmly on the table, his eyes steady and imbued with a patience that seemed resolute. "Isn't it all about father, then?" His questions pierced her like a sharp knife. Claire averted her gaze, unable to confront his eyes, yet Evan persisted. "I've observed that he distinct," he pressed on, his tone soft yet laden with significance. "Do you really believe I'm oblivious to it? He no longer holds the same regard for you, for us, as he once did." Claire remained motionless, her fingers entwined with such intensity that her knuckles blanched to a stark white. Evan's words, though gently uttered, pierced through the protective barrier she had constructed around her heart. "Your father has someone else," she said at last, her voice trembling, each word slicing through the silence like a sharp blade. Evan remained silent for a moment. His face momentarily flashed with anger before transforming into a gentler expression, one imbued with compassion. "You don't deserve this, Mom," he declared, his tone unwavering. His eyes shimmered with a fierce, protective glow. "Your father is mistaken. You have offered him everything, yet he remains oblivious to it all. It baffles me how he could overlook your worth." His words wrapped around her aching heart, easing the chill of the emptiness within. Claire found herself struggling to recall the last moment when someone had affirmed her worth, reminding her that she was deserving of love and appreciation. It might have been years since the time when everything with Richard felt so close. Her gaze met Evan's, and for a brief instant, he sensed he was the sole inhabitant of the universe, the only one who genuinely understood her. That evening, once Evan had departed from the table, Claire lingered, her gaze fixed vacantly on Richard's phone resting on the counter. The messages, the pictures, the plans, they were fragments of glass, echoes of a life she had once envisioned as flawless. As the gentle illumination of the living room lights faded, she caught the subtle sound of footsteps drawing near. "Mom, are you still awake?" Evan's voice echoed softly from the threshold. Claire glanced upward, suddenly aware that she had been ensnared in her restless musings for hours. Evan entered the room, drawing out a chair to sit beside her. Initially, he remained silent, merely extending his hand to rest gently on her shoulder, a gesture both simple and profoundly impactful. "I'm here," he murmured gently. His eyes brimmed with a concern that seemed nearly insurmountable. Claire experienced the gentle warmth of his hand, and for the first time in years, she permitted herself to shed tears in the presence of another. She was free from the need to conceal herself, no longer required to don the facade of courage that had been her constant companion for so long. Evan remained, offering no judgment, no attempts at resolution. He remained there, her sole anchor in a disintegrating reality. In the days that ensued, Claire and Evan found themselves in each other's company more than they ever had before. They conversed about a myriad of topics, ranging from the mundane, such as the latest films Evan had seen, to the profound scars that Claire had concealed for an eternity. As Richard's absence settled into a familiar routine, Evan emerged as her unexpected refuge, the lifeline she hadn't recognized she was yearning for. One evening, as Claire perused the faded sketches from her past, Evan entered the room, cradling 2 steaming mugs of tea in his hands. He placed one before her and settled into a nearby seat. The distance that separated them was enveloped in quietude, yet it bore no hint of discomfort. The silence enveloped them, thick with a shared understanding and the weight of unvoiced thoughts. "You once mentioned that painting helps you discover who you are," Evan said softly, shattering the silence. "Have you ever considered returning to it?" Claire gazed at him, her eyes mirroring the weight of years filled with regret and sorrow she had fought so fiercely to conceal. "I think I've forgotten how," she admitted, her voice barely more than a whisper, a confession tinged with vulnerability and resignation. Evan extended his hand, brushing against hers with a tender touch. In that instant, an unvoiced connection lingered in the air between them. The connection transcended the mere relationship of a mother and her son. It was an ineffable connection, a force that transcended their understanding, a nuance that softened the boundaries they had always believed were immutable. Their touch held on, stretching the moment beyond its intended bounds. Claire experienced the warmth of his skin, a feeling that brought her both solace and a hint of unease. She withdrew her hand abruptly, her heart pounding, yet Evan's eyes held a calm intensity, as if he grasped the turmoil she was desperately trying to conceal. That night, as Claire entered her room, an undeniable weight pressed against her, a sensation she could not ignore. The lines that once defined them started to blur, and she questioned whether she possessed the fortitude to maintain their separation. On that night, the rain fell in a relentless cascade, each heavy drop striking the windows with a force that seemed intent on shattering the stillness that cloaked the house. Claire found herself in solitude within the living room, the soft, muted yellow glow of the lamp creating a delicate, fragile halo of light around her. The glass of wine, only half full, quivered in her grasp, yet the void inside her remained unfilled. All day, restlessness enveloped her, ever since that morning when Evan's gaze lingered on her, a gaze that was both tender and laden with an unspoken intensity she feared to acknowledge. Her mind was a whirlwind of thoughts, each one demanding attention. Richard's messages, Evan's soothing words, and that ephemeral touch from the previous night that had remained in the air far too long. A fragment of her being yearned to break free, to elude the intricate snare of feelings that enveloped her. Yet another part of her held on, reluctant to release its grip. The rain pattered against the window, yet it was no match for the thunderous cadence of her racing heartbeat. A sudden knock on the door interrupted her swirling thoughts. Claire recoiled, standing from the sofa to cast a wary look toward the entrance. Sophia was the one. She entered with her customary ease, her hair still glistening from the rain. Claire managed a tight smile, attempting to conceal the storm of emotions swirling within her. Yet Sophia, with her keen intuition, swiftly detected that all was not right. "Claire, are you all right?" Sophia expressed her worry, her voice imbued with a blend of concern and gentle firmness. Claire gestured for her to take a seat, yet Sophia's inquisitive gaze remained fixed on her features. In an instant, the air thick with tension shattered as Sophia's voice pierced through, getting straight to the heart of the matter. "It seems you're concealing something from me, aren't you? Do not claim otherwise. Your essence is unmistakably evident." Claire stood before what seemed like a mirror, reflecting her innermost thoughts. Every secret she had endeavored to hide stared back at her, a haunting reminder of her struggles. "I don't know where to begin," she confessed, her voice quivering. "Everything seems utterly chaotic." Sophia's eyes remained steadfast. "This pertains to Richard, correct?" "He is." "You're not being honest with me, are you?" The inquiry struck with precision, cutting through the air with an unforgiving edge. Claire sensed the atmosphere shift, a constricting pressure enveloping her chest. She nodded, tears cascading quietly down her cheeks. "I understand," she murmured, "but that's not even the worst part." Sophia stood still, astonishment dancing in her eyes. "It is not." "What, then, is it?" Claire parted her lips to respond, yet just then, the unmistakable sound of footsteps reverberated through the hallway. Both women glanced over to find Evan positioned there, his features obscured by the soft glow of the dim light. His gaze flicked across Sophia for a moment before coming to rest on Claire. A glimmer danced in his eyes, an elusive spark that rendered Claire speechless. "Mom, I need to talk to you," Evan said, his voice steady yet laden with unexpressed emotion. Sophia cast her gaze back and forth between the two, her bewilderment and intrigue unmistakable. "Evan, not now," Claire said swiftly, a surge of panic tightening in her chest as she sensed her grip on the situation faltering. Yet Evan remained still, his gaze unwaveringly fixed on hers. Sophia remained upright, her face shrouded in a veil of doubt. "I believe it's time for me to leave," she stated, her voice wavering yet firm. "Claire, we shall converse later." With the door's closure, a sound echoed through the room, reminiscent of a tolling bell. Only Claire and Evan were left, the atmosphere around them heavy and oppressive. Claire gazed at her son, a persistent ache in her chest murmuring that something irrevocable was on the brink of unfolding. "Mom, I can't do this anymore," Evan said, his voice trembling with a mix of anguish and resolve. "I cannot remain a passive observer while you endure such pain. Your father is unworthy of you. I remain unfazed by the opinions of others, yet I—" He paused, his gaze aflame with a fervor that sent Claire's heart racing. "My affection for you surpasses the bounds of what a son typically feels for his mother." Claire recoiled, her breath caught in her throat. "Evan, you have no idea what you're talking about," she murmured, her voice quaking. Yet his gaze remained unwavering. "Do you sense it as well?" he remarked, inching forward. "Your gaze reveals it, and the way your hand hesitates, brushing against mine, speaks volumes. You cannot refute it, Mother." She yearned to refute it, to shout that he was mistaken, that the feelings intertwining between them were a merciless jest of fate. Yet the words eluded me. Evan advanced, the distance between them dwindling to nearly nothing. "Mom, I can't go back," he whispered, his gaze burning with an intensity that felt all-consuming. "I understand this is not right, yet my thoughts keep drifting to you, pondering." And then it occurred. A profound stillness enveloped the room as Evan lifted his hand to softly caress Claire's cheek. She remained close. Instead, she remained motionless, as if time had come to a standstill, the heat of his hand sending a shiver through her. Thunder rumbled outside, a portent from the heavens, yet within the confines of the room, the lines that had once separated them were utterly erased. Claire sensed she was on the brink of a great abyss, and rather than retreating, she boldly advanced a step nearer. Claire remained motionless in front of Evan, her heart aching as if it had been cleaved in half. His words lingered in her thoughts, resonating like the haunting call of an abyss from which she could not flee. Evan's gaze, tender yet tormented, brimming with an unbearable longing, rendered her breathless. Yet deep within her, a voice of reason cried out that this was wrong, that it could not persist. With a deep breath, she gathered the remnants of her strength, striving to emerge from the encroaching darkness that threatened to engulf her. "Evan, we can't do this," Claire whispered, her voice trembling like fragile glass. "I cherish you, yet not in this manner. It is essential to grasp that this approach will not mend the wounds of our losses." Evan recoiled, his gaze heavy with torment. He recognized her correctness, yet the reality did little to soothe the pain or quell the tempest of grief and frustration swirling within him. "You don't understand," he said, his voice quivering with emotion. "My only desire is for your happiness. I want you to understand that there is someone ready to sacrifice it all for you." Claire's tears cascaded down, each drop piercing her heart with a profound ache. She moved nearer to him, resting a firm hand on his shoulder, her gaze soft yet determined. "Evan, your generosity has surpassed anything I could have hoped for. Your unwavering support has meant the world to me in my times of need, yet I find myself questioning the direction we are headed. We shall obliterate all that exists, ourselves, one another, and the future that rightfully belongs to you." Evan remained motionless, his eyes glistening as if attempting to grasp her essence, yet after a brief pause, he acquiesced with a nod and retreated. They stood together in the stillness, the heaviness of their feelings enveloping them as if time had come to a standstill. The chime of the doorbell pierced through the dense silence. Claire recoiled, hastily brushing away her tears as she pivoted toward the door. Evan lowered his gaze, uttering not a word, and silently exited the room, leaving Claire to confront the stark reality that lay ahead of her. She swung the door wide, revealing Richard, his coat drenched from the relentless rain. His expression was foreign, a distance she had never encountered before, yet this time, Claire felt no ache in her heart. She recognized with a jolt that any emotions she had previously harbored for him had long since dissipated. "We need to talk," Richard said, his voice laden with gravity, as if he too sensed that something irrevocable was taking shape. Claire welcomed him inside, yet her heart had turned icy, her determination unwavering. She had grown indifferent to explanations or excuses. She was weary of facing yet another web of deceit. As Richard settled into his seat, his next words rendered her utterly speechless. "I know I've made mistakes," Richard admitted, his typical arrogance laid bare, his eyes lacking their customary smugness. "I have caused you pain, Claire. I failed to be present for you in your time of need. However, Sophia is not the core problem in this situation. I wish to rectify this situation. If that is still your desire. Claire sensed a constriction in her chest. His words resonated with an unexpected sincerity, yet they arrived far too late. It dawned on her at that moment that it wasn't Richard's treachery that had shattered their family. The void, the separation, and the chill had quietly worn away at their bond over the years. Richard, you're right, Claire replied, her voice steady, a calmness that even took her by surprise. Yet, there remains nothing here to mend. It slipped away from us long ago, and we are both aware of it. This is neither Sophia's fault nor anyone else's. We have undeniably ventured too far to retrace our steps. Richard lingered in quiet contemplation. He remained silent, offering no objections or dissent. He absorbed her words with a quiet intensity, his shoulders sagging under an invisible burden. Claire stood up, a spark of resolve shining in her gaze. With the dawn of a new day, Claire took her leave. She turned her back on it all, the house, the memories, and the dreams that lingered, forever incomplete. With just a modest suitcase in hand and an unfinished painting by her side, she carried with her the echoes of the voids in her existence, a promise of the vibrant hues she would eventually restore. Evan lingered beside the car, watching her as she readied to depart, his gaze laden with feeling, yet this time, silence held no secrets between them. He grasped her hand softly and murmured, "Mom, you'll be all right." "Thus, I shall too." Claire nodded, bestowing upon him a gentle, bittersweet smile. She understood that the path before her would be fraught with challenges, yet it stood as the most honest choice she had ever embraced. With a flick of the ignition, she brought the car to life, casting a fleeting glance at the rearview mirror for one final moment. Evan's silhouette diminished gradually, dissolving into the gentle embrace of the morning light. As Claire drove away, leaving it all behind, a peculiar sense of tranquility enveloped her. Deep within her heart, she sensed that this was not the conclusion. A fresh chapter was unfolding. A chapter she would craft according to her own vision, no longer merely a specter in her own existence.